Welcome, one and all. Welcome to another edition of To The Point here on Classic 105. Also, GBN TV, whether you're viewing on Channel 7, Channel 11, or Channels 20. Let me say good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome. Let me say good morning also to our social media platforms this morning, especially those of you via Facebook. Good morning to you. Don't forget to share the live until you pop in and you're viewing or listening there. You can certainly share the live. Let me say good morning also to our viewers via our YouTube channel, GBN Production. Good morning and thanks for taking the time to tune in this morning. Welcome once again to The Point for today. It's Thursday, the 22nd day of September, within the year 2022, and there's also a significant date in the history of Grenada. And I've been hearing some chit-chat about it for the morning already, pertaining to, of course, Hurricanes Janet. On this date, was it 1955? I hope I'm right about the year. I have a bit of a limited knowledge pertaining to it. Well, it was way before my time, but certainly hope that those of you who are in the world per se around that time, one of these days you could exactly share a lot of that, and I would certainly be interested in hearing about it. Let's get straight into the point this morning. This morning, I have a guest with me this morning. We have Mr. Mike Sylvester. He's the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Finance. Let's go over and say good morning to Mr. Mike. Mr. Mike, good morning to you. How are you doing this morning, sir?
Good morning to you, and good morning to your listeners. I'm happy to be here to share some information in terms of what's happening in the Ministry of Finance.
Well, welcome to The Point once again, and of course, it's a pleasure to have you with us this morning. There's lots we need to throw out, of course, to the listening and viewing public this morning, and we certainly, the listening and viewing public, would love to hear what you would like to share with them this morning, and certainly hope that they will be able to absorb all that needs to be, that will be, per se, thrown out to them this morning. We will have an early wrap for the program this morning for you listeners this morning. We know we have cricket, CPL cricket, coming up for you. So just around 10 minutes or so before 10 o'clock this morning, we will certainly have a wrap for the program for today. So I'm going to give you the teams that will be playing shortly. So let me get into the meat of the matter with Mr. Sylvester this morning once again. So we getting into this morning, and let's give us an update in terms of on the economy as of 2022 thus far. If you want to give us just a brief recap before we get into the conversation this morning, go right ahead.
Oh, well, thank you very much. So we are seeing continued recovery in the economy. You would recall that the economy declined significantly in 2020 on account of the pandemic. So there was a decline in the region of 14% in 2020. Last year, we've seen a recovery of around 4.7%. And this year, based on the high frequency indicators that we would have collected for the year so far, we are expecting continued growth in the region of around 3.3%. Now, those numbers are very preliminary. We have a lot of things happening and would happen before the end of the year. And so those numbers would most likely change. But for the most part, we expect positive growth in 2022. And of course, looking forward as well.
All right. Well, you know, you mentioned that there had been some growth and also some negative growth. I think you did mention that, and a lot of it is based on the financial state of the world today. Not only in Grenada, but we know what it's like around the world. We know the impact we had because of COVID and so forth. All of that, I would assume, may have paid the reasons why we have seen such the growth pattern in the economy today. Am I correct by saying that?
Very correct. So, as I said, 2020 was the pandemic. Of course, the pandemic continues in some respects, or the lingering effects, as we say. And coupled with that, we have many other factors that are affecting, the economic developments around the world and, of course, in Grenada. To a large extent, what happens in the outside world has a significant impact on Grenada because of our small size and the fact that we rely heavily on some of those source markets for tourists and for imports and exports and so on. So yes, the world, there's quite a bit of uncertainty in the world right now, and that, in a sense, will have some impact on our projections for growth next year. As you rightly said, we have the war in Ukraine that, of course, with no end in sight. We have inflation, which is a major issue, and we recently heard some of the major economies taking decisions to try to curb inflation. And of course, with that, you have these issues of recession and so on being talked about in some of those major economies. And to the extent that we have that, Grenada will in fact see some repercussions coming out of those events. So it's a very uncertain environment. And you mentioned a while ago, for example, the fact that we are in the hurricane season, and we are seeing a very active season this year, as expected. And God forbid we have any major event, that again can have some impact in terms of what happens this year and next year, in terms of our prospects for growth and unemployment and some of the other macroeconomic indicators that we try to move and monitor.
All right. Now, the 2022 budget, the performance of it and so forth, could you give us a little bit of insight how that actually played out, knowing that, it's been a particular year, 2020, although it has not totally wrapped up as yet. We had the budget presentation back in the latter part of 2021 that was referenced for 2022. Give us a little bit on the 2022 budget performance thus far.
The 2022 budget performance has been quite interesting. Let me say, first of all, that in terms of revenues, we are seeing revenues over and above what we would have projected for the first half of the year so far. There are some one-off unexpected receipts that we for example, we received a significant injection from the Grenada Ports Authority by way of dividends in January, about $17.5 million. And so that is something that we did not anticipate or expect as part of our budget projections. There was also the SGU grant of $30 million US, which we also got earlier in the year. That again was not something that we would have anticipated. And so it would have, of course, caused our revenues and grants to be much higher than anticipated. But apart from that, we do see that the revenues are stronger than we would have projected, even if you control for those two particular items that I just spoke about. On the recurrent side, is broadly on track in terms of what we would have projected. We are seeing a significant jump in capital expenditure for the year so far. In fact, this is the highest I've seen in many years I've been here in terms of capex for the first half of the year. And we do anticipate that by the end of the year, we may exceed the budget in terms of the actual spend. There is a supplementary estimate that was approved by the Finance Committee only recently, and that supplementary estimate is adding basically 117 million on the capital side to what would have been approved in the 2022 budget. Sorry, that's the 335 million thereabout that would have been approved. Now, it doesn't mean that you will spend all of that, but depending on how things go, I believe we would exceed the budget by a margin. So in that context, we do still expect the performance of the fiscal to be better than we would have anticipated in the budget, given some of the one-off receipts and the fact that the revenues are growing faster and so on. But we have the other issue with the expenditure itself, on the capital side, growing a bit faster than we anticipated. And so that is what is really in the mix for 2022 budget performance.
You mentioned about the capital side is going beyond expected. What are some of the reasons you would like to state for cause of that, per se?
Well, there was a ramp up in capex. I don't want to say it was attributed to the election, but some of the programs and so on, like the Concord Roads and the feeder roads and the agriculture feeder roads, you're seeing significant spending there. Many of that, of course, has to do with works that would have contracted and so on that would have been issued. Works that are ongoing, some would have to be paid, and of course, I believe for the rest of the year, we're seeing that you have some of the devolution programs and so on being continued or are continuing towards the end of the year. So you are talking about that kind of spending. In terms of the capital side. There are some major projects as well that are ongoing. So the St. John's River project, there's a river project there. You know, some of those projects, the agriculture feeder roads some of those projects are being implemented at pace. And so, in some respects, that is what is driving the capital expenditure.
All right. Interesting there, folks. We drew for a break inside the segment, folks. We're going to take a first break, and we come back and we chit-chat more with Mr. Mike Sylvester, the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Finance. We come in right back after the break.
I want to be free.
Raise it high up the ladder.
I come with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. Are you coming?
I got marble young man. We know this thing.
I didn't go find out. Man, ring big so. How much you playing? 4 down. 4 down.
So you playing 4 down, right?
Yeah.
Wow, tips, man. Tips. I man on tips.
Hey, that man back.
Play.
How much you come with, man? How much you come with? You go with that? A lot? You go with a lot?
You box me, man.
I go with 4, 5 and I go with 0. Let me go with 0, boy.
Nah, I have a last piece.
You ready?
I'm in last stop.
You have to play for that, No, I go leave one.
Let me play that for 2. Let me attack.
Okay, I'll let you hear.
Alright.
So,
I said now for 2.
yeah.
Aye. Yes.
What you have to say, though? What you have to say?
Yes.
What you have to say? What do you do? People, let me tell you something. Don't bother with him. He talk marble. He can't play ball. He knocks soft. He playing sneaky. But anything, Friday, you will tell us about the game Friday?
Brings.
I don't bring.
I don't
bring. I better they used to call me G's. Anyway, we go tell you more Friday on We Culture. 8 o'clock, join us.
We're the Antonin, the Caribbean. We're the Antonin.
Say good morning once again to our listeners and viewers this morning. GBN TV viewers and listeners, good morning to you. Those of you listening via K105, let me say good morning to you once again. And those of you via, of course, social media platform, Facebook to be precise, and also those of you via YouTube channel, good morning and welcome back. Welcome back to the point. We have PS with us, Mr. Mike Sylvester, and we're talking lots this morning pertaining to the fiscal situation in Grenada and so forth. This is the segment that we certainly want to get into. Welcome once again, Mike. Welcome back to the point. No,
Yeah, I'm not hearing you very well. I'm not sure what's happening.
well, I'm not sure. Let me see if I can have that sorted out. Is it any better?
Slightly.
All right. I'm not sure why you're not hearing me, but you should be hearing me. All right. So we spoke in our first segment. We did discuss. You gave us an update on the economy, and of course we also spoke about the 2022 budget performance. You did mention about that. Let's get into the fiscal measures per se in that the Ministry of Finance have decided to get into. Let's have a bit of a discussion about that. Tell us about some of the fiscal measures that will be implemented and so forth. Let us know about that.
Right. So, the fiscal measures and, of course, make recommendations to the cabinet. And so the Ministry of Finance would have undertaken an exercise where we sort of look at what was actually happening, having had some of those measures implemented for a period of time since December. So let me just focus on the fuel, the cap on the fuel, which is a measure that I see quite a bit of debate and discussions and so on are ongoing. So basically there was a cap on fuel in December of last year, December 18 to be exact, that's the first date. And what that cap meant is that the automatic fuel pricing mechanism that would have been in place since 2007, 2006, thereabout, when we had at the height of the food and fuel prices back then, there was a mechanism that allowed the full pass-through of the international prices to the domestic price in terms of fuel. So you have the build-up that speaks to the cost insurance freight, so that's the base, right? On that, you add the petrol tax, and then you add the company's margin, and then you add the dealer's margin, and that gives you the final price at the pump for gasoline and diesel, and of course kerosene as well. And then you have LPG, which is a similar kind of arrangement. So basically that is what would have been in place since then. Now with the high and rising fuel prices and so on, you of course had gas price or diesel price and so on that rising quite significantly. And of course, given the impact of fuel in the production and many of the things that we do, you will have, of course have a pass on in terms of the actual price of goods and so on the shelf. Added to the fact that some of our imports or the products that we use are really import driven, or the prices are import driven. So you had a situation where that was actually happening. The government took a decision to put a cap on the gasoline and diesel at $15 at the pump. So what it meant is that when you do the addition, in terms of the build-up, you may get 18, 19, 20, in some cases, $22. Now, when the price is 22, what it meant is that the government was losing its $5.50, which was the statutory petrol tax. And then you had that the difference was being a margin loss on behalf of the suppliers of the fuel. And so since then, we've had a significant buildup of arrears, if you want to call it that, in terms of margin losses to the suppliers. And in some months, the government would have collected no petrol tax at all. All right. What you'd have happening with the recent change and recent announcement with respect to the fuel price, and you'd have seen a significant drop in the price at the pump, is that the government would have taken a decision to remove the cap of $15, so there is no cap, and the government would have also reduced the petrol tax from $5.50 to zero. So if you're looking at the build-up now, the build-up will show the cost insurance freight. It will show the company's margin of $1.25 thereabout. For gas, you will see the margins for the retailers, so that's the gas stations and so on, around 97 cents, all right, for gallon. So that is what gives you the $12 or the $14.75 in respect of the diesel, all right. And the government has announced that will remain for the rest of the year or the next 4 or so fuel price changes. You know that the prices are changed at the pump or every 18th of the month. And so we're talking about up to the 18th of December. You will see that mechanism being in place, right, where there will be no petrol tax at all, and that there will be no cap. So the prices are allowed to actually fluctuate freely. Now, if the CIF, that's it, the price on the international market, if that were to increase, then of course you will see that $12.74 or whatever going up, because that is really the base that is moving as a result of the international price. Now, we've seen, for example, a drop in price since the height of the Russia-Ukraine war, from around $120 something a barrel US to around 98 on average right now. And we're talking about the West Texas Index and the Brent crude in terms of the benchmark prices that for oil and so on. So to the extent that will remain around that price, we hope that we will see, for example, the rest of the year, that price will remain around the $12, $13 at the pump, assuming that the policy remains with the removal of the cap and the removal of the petrol tax in a sense. So I think that's good news. We have to, of course, look at 2023 in terms of how government would fund its programs and policies, and to what extent there will be a reintroduction of some form of petrol tax in that formula. So that's one. Very quickly, you want to add something on the petrol tax?
Well, no, I was. You mentioned no that there'll be zero tax collected. No, that the government has removed the cap and also the removal of you mentioned the tax on the fuel.
Right.
How is in terms now? How is that going to affect government in the next 3 months or so, or in the next couple of months? So you say that's going to be removed by the end of December. What is the effect that will be on government to say?
Right. So for the year so far, we would have collected about $32 million thereabout in petrol tax, right? That's from January to September thereabout. Our budget for petrol tax for the year is about $62 million thereabout. So we are talking that we will not collect, say, around $30 million between now and December. Because of that. But as I mentioned earlier, because of some of the one-off receipts that we have gotten, and because of the fact that the other revenue items are performing better, the net effect on balance is that we are still doing pretty well in terms of our fiscal situation, right? And so there is that bit of fiscal space to allow for the government to actually take that particular action. And it would not significantly affect government's performance at this particular time. But we are talking about going into a new year with a lot of uncertainties and so on in terms of what the impact on Grenada's economy will be based on what's happening at the world level. And so that they need to look at that again. They need to look at that again to see how you get the right mix of policies to be able to drive the economy, and so on, create employment at the same time, be able to meet your payments, because to the extent that government cannot meet the payments, given that government is such a huge player in the economy, it could have some significant knock-on effects from those issues.
All right. There's in the last post, of course, or the one before, if I'm correct about that, we heard the Prime Minister did mention about removal of or returning to the 2019. What was it given in terms of on the port? What do you call that? The tariffs per se. Yeah. Freights per se. Sorry about that. The freights per se. Now, with the removal of that and going back to that 2019 freight level, how does government intends to of course capitalize per se on that in the upcoming couple months? And they say that's going to be for a 6 months segment or so. How does government intends to capitalize on that?
Well, right. So that's a measure, again, to bring relief to the consumers, bring relief to the population, to the citizen. The intention is that, given that government is giving up some of its taxes by way of having the freight adjusted to the 2019 levels, there should be, in the final pricing or cost of goods and services, or goods in particular, that you would have cheaper goods on the shelf. And so that is the intent and purpose of that measure. Now, as we would have said in many of the press briefing in particular, is that the onus is really on the businesses and so on to pass on those savings to the final consumer. It's difficult for the Ministry of Finance or for even government to police or monitor every single business out there and every single item on the shelf to see whether and to what extent that those savings have been passed on. So it's really an administrative nightmare to be able to do so. And so we would have probably called that the businesses would be socially responsible and so on and pass on those savings. So that's really the effect. Because what you would have happening is, because you're using 2019 rates for many of the regions where you would have had significant increases in freight, when you do the calculations in terms of duties and taxes, you will be paying, those importers will be paying much less. And so it means that if you pay much less, those savings you should pass on and not keep for yourself. And basically, basically keep for yourself. And I was about to say fatten your business, but that's perhaps not the right word to use.
How soon will we see, or will we feel, especially the consumers over there, how soon could we actually feel that effect of that trickle-down effect, per se, in terms of the reduction in the freight prices, when know that it will help the regular people out there who go out to purchase from the supermarkets and so forth? How soon could we actually feel that? Or
that's a very good question, because there is the issue of if you want to call it old stocks that these businesses would have, and of course they would have that period where they would have to sell those goods before they sort of put on instead of import and pass on in terms of new imports and so on. So that is an issue that we would have discussed and debated. We are also thinking through in terms of if we are not seeing the pass-through immediately, how we can perhaps propose new measures to be able to deal with that. There are some suggestions, for example, that where you give a tax rebate to the businesses and then you apply the effect almost immediately. Those are some suggestions that we would have received and so on in terms of that discussion. But you would hopefully see that by say month 2 or month 3, because companies in Grenada don't hold stocks for that such long a period. Yeah. But that is something for us to monitor. I mean, we have had one business came to us and said they want to be used as a test case to basically monitor and see how this is driving. Because the fact of the matter is that measure really came to us from the chamber. All right. The chamber would have written to the Ministry of Finance indicating that they believe that this would significantly have an impact in terms of their businesses by allowing for people to be able to purchase more and so on. That was reiterated in a function that the chamber had, the chamber luncheon, in terms of that being one of the measures. In fact, I remember when that was announced, we had a rousing round of applause from the members. So I mean, the government would have looked at it and evaluated it. We have provided all the fiscal implications and so on in terms of what we see the impact would be on government revenues, what we believe that the impact would be, and how we believe that would be passed on and so on. So there were a lot of discussions around it. The government believed that it would help in this period, and so the measure will be rolled out, and we are really hoping that the businesses would pass on those savings, given that the fact that inflation is really an issue for all of us, and then you're having it from many fronts. So you're having it from your light bills, you're having it from the supermarkets. We were just talking about the price of the pump and so on. And based on what's happening in our major source markets, the US and Canada, where you have inflation in the region of 8-9%, if that does not go down anytime soon, you will really have a difficult period in terms of trying to manage high and rising food and fuel prices in particular, where that is where you really have the greater impact on people, especially the less fortunate citizens.
Mike, I know it's of course we're in the latter part of 2022. I guess the mindset of the Ministry of Finance now is in terms of preparation for the 2023 budget per se. And so we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to speak a wee bit in terms of what is like now, or the ongoing preparation. I'm assuming in terms of the different meetings and you folks are having in terms of preparation for the 2023 budget. We will talk about that when we do come back. It's To The Point here on the K105 and the GBN TV. We're coming right back after the break.
Mr. mentioned the wing high, then you have things like man, you must come back, We have the low power there.
It is kind of like the same man, and it's just different name for the same kind of thing.
And last but not least, I just want to say to all the men who saw me, call me, and ask for a piece of cake. I'm baking this weekend.
Join us Fridays at 8 on GBN Television, K105 FM, GBN's Facebook page, and YouTube channel for We Culture.
Are you a small business and would like your business to grow? Do you have an event, products, or services that people should know about? Be wise. Advertise. Book your spot on GBN Shopping Guide. Be part of Grenada's biggest advertising medium, the Grenada Broadcasting Network. Call our sales department now on 440-2446 or 440-3033 or GBN plus the number sign. Email us at sales@gbn.gd. Special conditions apply.
This could be out. Brilliant catch. What a stunning catch.
The biggest party in sports, the Caribbean Premier League, is back and live on GBN Television. Capture the energy, excitement, and euphoria of the beloved game. 34 matches, 6 teams, only one to be crowned champion. The action starts August 31st.
Welcome back to our listeners and our viewers this morning. To the point for today, Thursday, and we're speaking to the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Finance, that's Mr. Mike Sylvester this morning, and we get back into our discussion this morning. Welcome back once again, Mike. I did mention to you when we were before the break that we're going to be getting into in this particular segment to chat a wee bit about the 2023 budget preparations. I will know if there's any information you'd like to share with our viewing and listening audience this morning in terms of how preparation thus far for the 2023 budget preparations?
Yeah, well, thank you. Just to indicate that the budget preparation, that's the 2023 budget, is well underway. We have been working very hard for some time now to actually get to the stage where we are having the public consultations. And the public consultations is where you, the citizens, have an opportunity to provide input into the budget process and into the budget itself with respect to what plans, policies, and programs you want to see the government implement in the coming year. So usually it's a 3-year cycle. So we have the budget year and then the 2 forward years, which we sort of plan for. All right. The cabinet would have approved some of the preliminary documents that would sort of be the building blocks for the budget. So we've had the budget framework paper, which is approved. We have the medium-term fiscal framework, and there's a document that is referred to as the medium-term action plan, which is a distillation of government strategic focus plans, priorities, and so on, in a very broad sense for the next 3 years. And those documents would have been submitted to the ministries and departments. We'd have had consultations at the government level. So we'd have had a first budget retreat, which is brought together stakeholders within government, so the ministers, permanent secretaries, senior managers, and so on, finance officers, planning officers, all of those persons would have come together and had a very productive discussion on the budget for 2023 and beyond. And we have started now the public consultations. So we've met with the tourism stakeholders, we've met with the private sector, we've met with the unions. I think there is a follow-up meeting with the unions. We've met with the civil society organizations and so on. We've met with all the statutory bodies. And yesterday we have started the consultation at the parish levels. Today. We would have started the consultations at the parish level. So we're talking about Carriacou and St. John's and St. Patrick's and so on. St. Patrick's, sorry. All of the parishes we touch, and we're having face-to-face in those parishes. Some of the stakeholder consultations we're having virtually. And so we had the agriculture consultations yesterday. And today there is a youth consultation that we're having at the youth center. So the idea is really to get from persons feedback on what you see as the plans and programs and policies for government for 2023. Some of those is basically some of those are for you to validate, because the government would have announced its plans and programs, of course, in its own agenda. It's for you to as well indicate what you believe that government should drop, what government should maintain, how government should tweak. And we've been having some very interesting input from stakeholders. There's, for example, the discussion about the bushing program, in terms of having a different look to the bushing program to make it at least more productive in terms of trying to help people out of the situation as opposed to just continue to maintain the program in its current form. So there are talks about the Imani program, for example, again, reimagining the Imani program to make it better suited to the needs of the country in terms of training and in terms of some of the skill set that the country needs. So there are a lot of very useful and insightful input that we're receiving. And we are very happy for the consultation, and so we invite everyone to participate as best as you can. Some of the consultations are being streamed live, even though they are face-to-face, so persons can also call in or send in your comments so that we can just pull together all of those input and evaluate and review and cabinet and then decide in terms of which are the ones that they're going to go forward with within the first year, second year, third year of the budget cycle.
All right. You did mention this. It was a question I had coming up, but since you spoke about it, I'll just get into it once again. We know there's a new government in place right now, and of course, how has it been? Is there anything that we're going to see different in this budget consultation that we're having, or even in the presentation to come? Now, anything that's different that we're going to see coming about in this time around?
And I didn't hear you quite well, but I think you're asking if there's something that
I'm not sure why you're not hearing me, but I'm not sure. Yeah. I'm not sure why. But I was saying that knowing that there's a new government in place right now, and in terms of the consultations that are taking place and the various meetings with the various stakeholders, is there anything different that we're going to see this time around in terms of the budget per se for 2023?
Right. So, I mean, we're having the face-to-face consultations, which we have not had in a while because of the pandemic. In some respects, would have affected that. At the same time, we want to be able to use the technology, so we're having some of the hybrid consultations, which I think is something new and different. And the sort of town hall style consultations, I think, are very useful in the sense that you get to meet people and to hear them face to face and to feel and see the reaction. I think that's a plus. Of course, the government has announced a transformational agenda, so I would expect that the budget would reflect that in terms of being transformational, not just in words, but in the projects and programs and plans and so on that will be implemented. And so we are at the stage, as you said, where we are getting in submissions from the ministries and departments, and we are doing the consultations. And at some point before we get to cabinet, there will be, of course, a look at what's before us and ensure that it's in line with government's policies and government's agenda. So I would say that it would be different in the context that the focus in some respects are different. So the focus is different in some respects. So that is something that we need to you can look forward to, I would say, because it's a different agenda.
All right.
I think that's as much as I would probably say.
All right. I understand that. I mean, because it's a new feeling coming through, knowing that there's a new government in place. Now we move to updates that, of course, it's been one of the talk that's around. What's the update you can give from your perspective in terms of update on the pinchment payments and so forth? Because knowing that we do have a limited time before we wrap up this one, just around 10 more minutes left on the show this morning. What can you tell us pertaining to or give us, per se, to viewers and listeners of the updates on the pension payments from the Ministry of Finance perspective this morning?
Right. So the cabinet would have approved the payment of the pension to the retroactive component of the pension to all retirees who would have retired from the 22nd of February 1985 to the time of the judgment, 29 March 2022. So everybody who would have retired during that would have been hired during that time and retired. They will receive both the pension and the gratuity retroactive. They will be brought on the pension payroll and start receiving pension payments going forward. Right? Persons who would have started after those years and retired after the judgment or retiring after the judgment, they would also receive the payments, and of course the process that they go through the various ministries and departments to have that process. The retroactive cohort that I mentioned, we would have established a pension secretariat, given the volume of persons that would need to be processed. And of course, you have to review all the documentation to make sure that they are eligible, to make sure that they are receiving the right payments and so on. So the cabinet would have authorized us to establish a pension secretariat, and we sort of designed it in terms of a one-stop shop, so persons can visit the secretariat on Lucas Street, the entrance to the Parliament building there, that house there. And if you have any inquiries, if you have any questions, if you have any comments, if you want to submit your application in person, you can do so. We would have also set up an online portal where persons can, in fact, submit their applications online. And that is something that we're hoping persons who are in the diaspora, persons who are not physically in a position to do so, they can submit that. And of course, we have the regular communication points, email, telephone information, and so on, that you can call in and ask a question. So that process is well on the way. The Secretariat would have reviewed, in fact, all of the applications that they would have received. The next step, of course, is the verification of the payment information. And then the audit department has a role in terms of making sure that it is within the context of the law, the information is correct. and then, of course, you would have the process of the payments by the Treasury. So the intention, as was announced, is that for the payments to be made by the end of November, we are in fact aiming to do so before and instead of do any mop-up by the end of November. But by the 15th of November, we should make all the payments that are due to persons. Of course, the estimate that we have so far is $60 million. And based on the calculations that we've had up to this time, we are within that ballpark figure. So it's on track, and we are very confident that everything will work well, and persons will receive the benefits and so on by that time, and they can, of course, move on with their lives.
I'm not sure if you were able to give us this morning, if that information is before you. Thus far, what has been the individuals who may have signed up thus far for pension? What is the figure like in terms of the amount of individuals who may have signed up for pension at this stage?
Right. So our initial estimates was around 400 persons. We are slightly above that. I think the total applications would have been around 500. But not everybody that apply, of course, will qualify. Mm-hmm. So there are persons, for example, who would have resigned. Let's suppose you work 10, 15 years and you resign from the service. Based on the law, you're not entitled to a pension. You have to retire from the system, having made either the required amount of years, and of course, if you add the age of retirement. So having years and retirement. So the minimum criteria in terms of qualification, and then of course you add the retirement age. You're entitled. But persons, for example, who would have resigned from the system, you're not entitled. But of course, those persons would apply, and we have been reviewing those applications, making sure that we have all the information so that we can respond to those persons. And there are other persons who are coming forward. Persons who would have perhaps been within the system, they moved to a statutory body, they would have no longer within the public service, but they felt that they would have worked at some point in the service and may qualify. And so I guess they have a right to ask a question. If you don't ask, the answer is always no. Yeah?
Exactly. All right. Well, we will entertain a couple of phone calls this morning, of course. So you listeners and viewers out there, you probably may have a question or two that you may like to ask the PS this morning. I recommend you keep your questions as short as possible because we drew for time. Just about 3 or 4 minutes left on the program this morning. Let's take our very first caller this morning. Caller, good morning, and how are you?
Yes, good morning. I had two questions, but whereas we're limited on time, I'd just like to hint Mr. Sylvester on something. By the way, Mr. Sylvester, my name is Citizen John Roller. You refused my telephone calls on various occasions. Mr. Sylvester, listen to me. People consider me to be a very obnoxious person. I must admit that I am. But when I'm correct on something and people jeer at me and scoff me, I get more arrogant. The verbal structure would have plus the past participle, sir, doesn't tell you what happened. And you abuse the use. I'm just urging you, sir, in the interest of posteriority, because you are saying things which shall remain recorded. And when you tell me that the government would have done something and they would have done this and would that, what are you really telling me, sir? I'm urging you, therefore, publicly, that you do some research on this structure and have it corrected for Christ's sake. Thank you very much and have a nice day. Will you?
All right, thank you, caller, for your, of course, whatever you try to chime in there with this morning. We will entertain another caller. I'm not sure Mike would want to answer anything pertaining to that this morning. 435-2041, 435-2041. We could, of course, entertain one more caller before we wrap this morning. So that we lost that caller there. But Mike, in due for time, it's already 10 minutes moving up before the top of the hour, so we may have to cut the call-in segments a bit short this morning. We apologize for the callers who may have been trying to get through. But Mike, and just to make some final comments before we wrap this morning, it's already 10 minutes moving up before 10 o'clock. Any final comments you would like to make throughout to the public there pertaining to all of them we have discussed? If you would like to throw before we take a wrap this morning, go right ahead, sir.
Well, thank you very much. And let me say that we are very happy to bring information to the general public in terms of what is happening within the Ministry of Finance. We are doing quite a bit of work. And so it's important that we share that information. You know, a lot of times you have organizations or institutions that are doing a lot of stuff and are not really speaking about it. So we are happy to do that. We need to both beef up our communications, beef up our engagement with the public. And so that is something that we hope to do shortly in terms of moving forward with a PR and a communications plan. So I just want to just remind persons about the budget consultations that we are having. Very, very important. The budget is a very important public tool. And so it will affect you in some form or fashion. And so we want to ensure that you have your say. And I want to just take this opportunity again to encourage you to give your full participation whenever we come to you or whenever we have a program, virtually or otherwise, to share your thoughts and so on. So with that, I'm happy to share information with the general public on the work of the Ministry of Finance. And then of course we are happy to be criticized or constructive criticisms and so on. So that is not an issue for us at all. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you once again, Pierce Mike Sylvester, and certainly all the best to you. Have yourself a great day, sir. It's K105 and GBN TV. That's what we take a wrap for To The Point for today. You can join us again for another edition. Certainly that will be tomorrow once the Almighty permits. Have yourself a good one. Don't forget, cricket comes up next, folks. We do have coming up next game. Let me take a quick peek at my list this morning. And today we have the Trinbago Knight Riders versus the St. Kitts and Nevis Patriots. That game comes up for you just around 10 a.m. this morning, just about 8 minutes or so from now. Join us on both GBN TV and K105. All right, folks, it's all about CPL games coming up. Until another edition of To The Point, have yourself a great day.